Hi everybody, welcome to Take a Crack at It. In this two-part video, we're going to be talking about garden boxes. In part one, we're going to talk about designing the garden box, prepping the space, and then building them. In part two, we'll talk about drip irrigation and some of the different options that exist and how to get that system set up so it works right for your garden box. The first thing is designing the garden box. And for our space, it's a relatively small garden area. And we wanted something that was going to look good, last a long time, and also give us the ability to kind of get in between the garden boxes easily, as well as grow different things. Because if we're going to grow something like mint, which is a weed, we want to contain it. Otherwise, it'll take over the garden box if you don't keep it pruned. So this design is based on 4-inch by 4-inch cedar, and we just found it online. And if you do an internet search, you can find 100 different garden box designs. And it really is going to come down to how much you want to spend, what kind of looks good to you. But at the core, it's a box, and it's not overcomplicated in how you want to set this up. Because you could use posts with some like thinner deck boards that are wider than 4-inch to kind of cut down on the lumber. That would be lower cost. Cedar is a good option though, because treated lumber has the risk of chemicals leaching into the soil, and for us it just wasn't worth the risk. And pine doesn't last nearly as long as cedar will. So we like this style look, the way it overlaps on the end. We kind of added our own twist to it by creating this second tier that allows us to kind of separate things and grow different things. And actually this big trapezoid one has a third tier in the back corner. But it's visually interesting and it looks good. Now, to give you a frame of reference, 4-inch by 4-inch cedar for us came in 8-foot lengths at the lumber yard and cost about $20 a piece. So it is an investment, and these are 2 feet by 6 feet, which means you needed 2 of these $20 pieces to make 1 row. So, you know, maybe there's $150 or so of lumber into this box, and these 2 boxes are identical, and a little bit more in the third box because it's bigger. But it does look good, and these boxes will last longer than we own the house. So once you've got your design, you've thought about how much you want to spend, the look of the design, how complicated you want to make the box, it's ready to time to prep the site. Here, imagine all this stuff is out of here. It's the old garden. Basically, it's tearing out all the weeds and doing your best you can to kind of try to level the dirt, because in our case we had a little bit of slope. You can use a 2x4 or a 3-foot level to kind of help you scrape dirt or at least identify low points. And when you get done with that, I just compacted it with my feet lightly. You don't need to rent a compactor or anything fancy or be perfectly level. But then it was time to lay the landscape fabric, and this is the gray commercial stuff. Do yourself a favor and use this style as opposed to the cheap black stuff that will like rip and tear. Some people use plastic, but in Michigan, in a freeze-thaw climate, I think it's good to have moisture be able to breathe as opposed to plastic down here. So it was just literally taking, it took 3 rolls to kind of go and cross, overlap a little bit and get the fabric down. And I like to make the final cuts with the utility knife once, almost as a final step when everything's in place, just in case the fabric shifts around a little bit. So now we've got our design, we've got our site prepped, and it's time to start actually making the boxes. This is a very simple design because once you have the pattern of 1 row or 1 layer laid out, pretty much these 2 boxes are identical to each other. They go up 3 feet high, which is more than enough space on this 4-inch by 4-inch design to get you up off the ground, and then 1 more level if you want to do something that adds a little bit of extra complexity or visual appeal or ability to control what you grow. It's a simple project. I actually worked on this in the spring with my 11 and 12-year-old, and so it's kind of a fun project to do with the kids. It's something to do for mom. Now, once we got everything cut, you have a decision to make of, do you want to stain the cedar or not? If you don't, it's going to weather nice and gray. But we like the look of this kind of orangey cedar look, classic look. It requires a little extra maintenance every few years to kind of brush on a new fresh coat. But this is a product called Cabot Cedar Tone, and the way I like to apply it is, take a handy pail with one of these little roller brushes with like a 3/8 nap on it, half full, dip it in there, squeegee it, and then you just roll it on. If you imagine these pieces on a sawhorse, that helps put it on a lot quicker and easier and more efficiently. And then I back brush it with the foam brush, and that makes the job go really quick. If you're going to apply something like this, just make sure you don't do it on a really hot day in the sunlight. Then it will not cure correctly. I've learned the hard way. And what I do is I'll put 2x4s, a couple 2x4s in the lawn to lay these pieces out on, to let them dry overnight. But ideally do it where you have shade and not in direct sunlight. Okay, so once you've got the pieces ready to be assembled, that's the next step here. Now to do this, I did not want any nail heads to show in any of the outer edges or the top of these garden boxes, so it's a clean look. To be able to accomplish that, it's taking these first 3 rows and almost in the garage, flipping them over upside down. So this top edge here, which is facing up right now, is actually facing down on the garage floor. That allows you then to kind of build from the bottom row up. And what I mean by that is, if you look at these screws, these are GRKs, which is like a torque head grade screw. These are nice screws. If I can get one out here. This screw is more than enough depth to reach down into the board behind it. But really what's going on is because this is on the ground, or actually this is the top. You're driving screws up and up to kind of get it started. And you're going to do that all the way around, and really you're just making this 3-level rectangle right here. As a little bit of extra support, I used a 3/4 dowel and drilled in from the bottom. And if you're going to do that, just take your drill bit, mark it to within a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch with a piece of tape so you know when to stop. And you can drill a 3/4 inch hole up through here and drive that 3/4 wood dowel as a pin on all 4 outer corners. You don't need to do it on these kind of middle corners right here. It's not really a structural piece, it's more of a decorative. But these corners, those pins in there give you a little bit of extra support. You may need to use a 7/8 drill bit if you're going to use a 3/4 dowel. I used a 3/4 drill bit, but you really do have to pound it in. It's a really snug fit, so 7/8 might be a better idea if you can't get it to quite fit right. But then you've got these first 3 levels, and this is what I did. I brought the first 3 levels as just a giant rectangle and just set them in place. And this top row then is built once the garden boxes are all here, these tiers, these little extra 1 layer. You can build that once you're out here. And what's going on here is scrap piece. I had a couple miscuts. So I just used the scrap pieces to just go down all the way to the bottom, and just connected them with the screws. For this top row, you can use these same kind of, this is a finish head screw. You can buy these with like a wider head on them if you wanted to, for the first 3 layers, kind of like this. You could use landscape spikes. I mean, it's really sort of your preference. I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, but you just want something that's long enough. And drive them in at an angle. I put maybe one in kind of like this on the lower one, below the dirt line, just to give it a little extra stability. This isn't like needing to support a lot of weight, and so just kind of feel it. If you feel like you need an extra screw, put one in. But it doesn't need to be overcomplicated as far as the fastening. But this 3rd level is going to be constructed in place, whereas these first 3 levels that you see were built into the garage. And to build this trapezoid shape is the same concept applied, where it's 3 levels. And to get the angle of the trapezoid, it wasn't doing any fancy math. It was literally just coming out here with, laying a board down and another one going this way, and just taking a pencil and saying, okay, I need to cut it at this angle in order to get it to work. And at another angle down on the back corner. And once you get those angles figured out and mark where that is on your chop saw, it's just the same angle every time. So it's really not that complicated, but it does, it does look good, and you can get a nice clean angle and a fit here. Just last thing to talk about here is just the design of it. Is how fancy do you want to get, because this is the big trapezoid one, and it's midway through summer here. We've got stuff already growing, but it was building 1 level that kind of went all the way around here, and then saying, okay, well, we could have 1 big piece on this backside, or we could just bisect it again. There's just 1 more level, so it's kind of a 4th level. So you can get as fancy or as complicated as you want, or not, with doing that. But the end result is you've got a set of garden boxes. Like in our view, these look pretty sharp They're gonna last a long time. You know, it's set up in a way that it's really easy to maintain. And one thing I forgot to mention is once I set these in place before the dirt went on, is I did cut out the landscape fabric on the inner part, just to allow, you know, a little extra breathe, because I don't mind if the roots go down, just as long as they don't get weeds around here. And if you're wondering, this product, this is stone called Slatescape. I found this at the local landscape supply store. It's kind of cool. It's gray, bluish. It looks really good, and it'll last forever, or at least as long as you like the look of it. The only thing I find I have to do with it is once in the fall, I'll have to put the leaf blower on vacuum mode and just kind of vacuum up the leaves. But other than that, there's like literally no maintenance with this stuff. And I like it. It looks pretty sharp. We get a lot of compliments on it. Oh, one other thing too, on the garden boxes, before you put your dirt in, what we did, it's a little bit hard to see, but there's some plastic fabric, black, not fabric, I should say, it's just black plastic that was cut to maybe halfway, 3/4 down the first board on every section. If you take a staple gun, if you have one, electric one, you know, we just cut these pieces to go all around the inner perimeter of each one, and then just stapled them in place. Let's see if I can find another one back here that's kind of see it a little bit. But the idea with this black plastic is just to kind of keep some of the dirt and moisture off of it. Again, I'd say it's an optional step. You don't need to do this, but the idea was, again, it doesn't cover the bottom. It just covers the sides of the garden box in order to give it a little extra protection and longevity. All right, well, hopefully all of that made sense, and in part 2 we're going to talk about drip irrigation and how to get that set up. And good luck with your garden box project.